At what point have I not expressed, have I expressed something that has, like, if you go back, you're like, oh, but you said this. I don't know why you're even arguing this point, because the entire movie is not meant for him to be scary. I know I have to explain things to you. You have to come at me with facts. He threatened to kill his own son if Gohan didn't get out of his face. Yeah, in this version, that's what Legendary Super Saiyan looks like. Man, you couldn't understand or detect any of the subtle hints in what I was saying in my review, so I wouldn't be talking if I was you. Because from what I can see, you're like 15. Or you moron!
Do you feel in charge?
To protect the sheep, you gotta catch the wolf. And it takes a wolf to catch a wolf.
You could not live with your own failure.
A wise man gets more from his enemies than a fool from his friends.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Speak of the devil, and it shall appear.
Hey guys, Base Heavy 15-year-old here, back at you again with another video. Now it's very telling how easily swayed somebody is based on who they go out of their way to comment about. If this Twitter user had any sort of following, then they would immediately be trashed because of how stupid of a take this is. You can watch a scene and have no idea what's going on because you weren't paying attention. It's a valid question. You don't really want to argue with somebody who isn't even invested in the argument in the first place. It's used to prove you actually know what you're talking about, because people do get into debates and are somehow completely clueless and just pull out whatever they've heard. The only reason you would say that it isn't a valid question is because you are aware that you don't actually know anything about the subject. It's like saying you were bored and you didn't actually listen, therefore you already know the gist of what something is. Okay, so how would you know the gist if you didn't pay attention? For example, let's say you're reading a book and have to go back and read the page again because you were daydreaming. Sure, you read the whole page, but you missed vital information that is required to understand what happens next. I'm going to assume you don't enjoy watching people that you disagree with. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with that until you try to apply this into a debate. I enjoy watching both good and bad takes on things I enjoy. This helps me understand what's good and bad about whatever the topic is. It helps complete the full picture, and I enjoy having my own views challenged, which is why I find satisfaction in both negative and positive takes. Considering that you recorded the audio on the same day, I was expecting this to just be a jumbled rant, and for the most part, it certainly is. Definitely have all your points lined up if you're going to debate somebody. There's multiple points in the video where you pause to comment about how I haven't said something yet, only for a couple seconds later I bring up exactly what you just said. It makes it off-putting to be told that something hasn't been said, only to be immediately sideswiped by the point that I eventually make. I understand that the video is supposed to be a live reaction sort of thing, but I would recommend making something more thought out before countering someone's arguments. If I'm being 100, I'm pretty upset that your pinned comment is somebody reinforcing your own view and not my little challenge comment. He's not correct about a lot of things he said either. I'm quite certain you only agree with the last two paragraphs where he has the similar takes as you did about Broly, because the GT information is just wrong. Now, I would love to take apart every single moment of this 3-hour-long video, but I'm not making a 6-hour-long response. The focus of a debate is primarily the key moments, so I do have to do a lot of digging, and I will have to spice the video up just to make sure it has good structure. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay in the background. I'll add clips in from the video as needed for context or clarification, but otherwise you'll be seeing me play Dragon Ball games. Now, out of respect for Sassy, of course, I've watched the whole 3-hour video, more than once especially, and while editing, I've watched even more. As always, I promise that nothing is taken out of context and will once again leave the link to his video in the description. Now Sassy, this must be your first debate, so I get it. I was hoping you noticed my critiques had nothing to do with you actually disliking the movie, as whether or not you enjoyed it doesn't matter. There's a ton of moments in your recent response video that I can tell that's the impression you got. So I'll make it clear. I was not critiquing what you thought about the movie. You seem to have thought that that's what I was attempting to debunk and why I was making the video at all. I was actually critiquing your style of review and lack of knowledge. As I said, the scenes you critiqued were taken out of context, and you constantly gave false information about Dragon Ball. You were most likely thinking that I was some random keyboard warrior who was just mad that you didn't like the movie. That's okay. Since I haven't really given my own personal opinion on Dragon Ball yet, let's air that out real quick. I don't really care much for Dragon Ball. I don't like GT, and I don't like Dragon Ball Super very much. It's Z that's always been my main focus, and I also don't enjoy the Buu Saga. I don't even like most anime, and I think more than half of them are poorly written. Like, actual trash. I also don't like many of the cliches. In my experience with anime, Japan is just chock full of terrible writers. Most of the people chosen to do anime just know how to draw, and they find that now they also need an entire story and not just cool looking characters. So I just dropped most shows after season 1. Later on you'll bring up you don't like anime cliches, and I'll agree with what you're saying, but you keep using scenes as your leeway into these rants about a subject, which derails the scene you were just talking about, and now it's confusing on what exactly you're saying about a scene. That's how context gets jumbled, and suddenly we're not even talking about Dragon Ball anymore, but just some off-topic thing that you wanted to say about something unrelated, while at the same time using what you were just talking about as a trampoline into that off-topic subject, as if it's the scene's fault somehow. A quick critique of your style of debate here. I'm sure you're familiar with Leafy and iDubbbz. Your arguments are very much like Leafy. Instead of proving me wrong or generally participating in the argument, you would rather make what I said seem stupid, even though I have provided the context of what you said and how you said it. I'm not the only one to have taken what you said a different way than how you meant it. I have friends that have watched my video, and especially the Dragon Ball fans definitely heard what you said and came to the same conclusion as me. Even if you meant one thing or were fully aware of something, you didn't speak to that at all. In fact, your sentence structure in the video spoke the opposite. A lot of the criticisms I gave to you during the video are based off the conclusion I've gathered from what you said. So what may have sounded ridiculous to you was still based off what you conveyed in your video. While doing a reaction video in hindsight, your video will be at least 30 minutes over that. It's more surprising that you have 3 hours. I was really curious to see why it was so long, but it's a reaction style video with 90% of my video in it, so yeah. Freeform isn't usually the best approach to a debate. Quickly before we get into the bulk of everything, you bring up the definition of pandering, and then proceed to say, now you already made the mistake of saying in your opinion, and since you challenged me to look up the word as if I didn't understand the word pandering, well, let's look it up together. Just to really hammer it in, I searched for multiple definitions. It's not very smart to challenge me on semantics because it's the pettiest form of challenge, because connotation is more relevant in every form of conversation, but I do like indulging people when they think they're being cheeky or smart only to have them feel ridiculous for even trying. And in this case, it actually is important that semantics are involved because you keep using the word but you don't actually know what it means. So this is pandering. Pander. To gratify or indulge an immoral or distasteful desire, need, or habit, or a person with such a desire. To pander. To do or say what someone wants in order to please them, even though you know it is not right. Pander. To spoil a person by giving him his desires, usually something immoral or illegal. Pander. Someone who provides what is required to meet the ambitions or vices of another. To pander. To provide what is necessary by others due to their low level of taste or their weakness. Pander. If you pander to someone or to their wishes, you do everything that they want, often to get advantage for yourself. Pander. To please other people by doing or saying what you think they want you to do or say. Let's check the word when used in a sentence. The bloke would keep his temper, pander to her idiocies, take on the burden of worry and effort, even manage a good-tempered joke that never failed to infuriate. And even the many non-racist Republicans include many who are dismissive of the damage done by racism and willing to pander to, or at least tolerate the huge numbers of racists in their midst. Democrats pander to blacks to ensure their vote, but then they do absolutely zero in exchange. Demagogues pander to passion, prejudice, bigotry, and ignorance rather than reason. In some cases, corrupt lobbyists pander to... Okay, do you get it? Do you get it yet? You see, the definitions imply some sort of malicious intent or distasteful and immoral event being involved. Even the original definition was to give some sort of sexual satisfaction to someone in exchange for monetary gain. In conclusion, your use and interpretation of pandering is factually incorrect. Nothing happening in this movie is malicious, or has the intent to give rise to some sort of underlying inappropriate manipulation. The very fact that viewers of the movie do not stand to lose or gain anything for the omission or inclusion of characters, nor the provision of references to previous moments or events and objects already noted, absolves them from the category of pandering by literal definition. Now, let's get on to the video. What is up? my YouTube friends? My name is KotyTang. I was eagerly waiting for his response video, and to see that it was 3 hours was, I'm gonna be tackling the key moments as I said earlier, so there will be some smaller things that I leave out, such as when he starts rambling about random things or going off topic and no longer actually debating what I'm saying. So let's just get right into the key arguments. The reason I like actively seeking out videos that have explanations or alternative opinions is because I like listening to alternative takes, and as I say in my video, I don't respond or even leave a comment, I just move on. Later in the video you're going to bring up my channel, and I bring it up here only because it pertains to what we're talking about. So yes, I agree that there are those 3 types of people who wander onto videos, but when you articulate your points very well, you'll find that people can see where you're coming from. And even if they disagree, the majority will respect your opinions, and it will create a healthy discourse in the comments. Of course you'll have people that just are there to hate you, and of course there's people that just dislike and leave. If you read through the comments of my Sonic video, you'll see people seeing my take rather than going out of their way to go against me. As you know, it's not my first time seeing videos that go against my views, and I'll tell you from first-hand experience, the likes still outweigh the dislikes, because the person properly criticized it without being overzealous. In the case where they come off as pretentious or get misinformation, that's when they start getting more dislikes than likes. There's a lot of inaccurate power scaling videos out there, and let me tell you, they do numbers, but they don't get many likes. Even if the fans are super fans, the minority of everything is still very vocal. They use words and give takes that make you want to respond. Most fans of something aren't insane and ready to shoot somebody because they dislike their favorite show. You don't need to convince many people to listen to you, you just have to present yourself well enough so that they understand you. We'll get more into my channel when we get to the part that you bring it up. This is something you brought up a bunch in your video, that you did in fact watch a bit of Super. I didn't mean that you didn't watch the show at that point. I wasn't sure if you meant the movies, the anime, or how many episodes, but my initial reaction was that you saw it in some minor form and immediately hated it. As a side note, you don't really make it clear that you haven't seen Dragon Ball or all of Dragon Ball Super. In fact, you say that you were watching it while watching the movie. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying here. You said that Team 4-Star was where you were getting your information for the story. No, I'm not saying it's required to watch any version of Dragon Ball at all. Even somebody who's never watched it can just ask questions and people answer them. You use Team 4-Star as a backing of your knowledge of the show. That's why I bring up this comment. Not because you're required to watch a specific version, but because the movie that you're talking about doesn't pull its information from a parody. So it is important to be pulling from a reliable source. This is one of many statements that convinced me that you didn't actually know what you were talking about. This is one of the many reasons that I assumed that you were just mindlessly hating. Simply by countering your take with a positive one, people can see that there are things that you did enjoy. They won't think that now you like the movie, but while critiquing something, you get more validation from acknowledging that the movie has done something properly, before reminding everybody that they still consistently do a thing wrong. It's like when somebody reviews something a half star out of 5, it's very hard to believe a movie was that bad. Well, there's of course some exception, but most movies are okay at best. I actually don't watch many things because I don't really care for most things that come out, but even if I hated something, I would still be able to find some good in it, and in that you can find common ground with people. Finding common ground is very important when giving your take on something. Otherwise, as you see in your comments, and from me making a video response, it's very easy to be taken as blind hate. So for a little bit of Dragon Ball lore for you here, the Saiyans are Frieza's most vital race underneath him. They wipe out planets not just to do it and go back and have a drink, but they actually sell these planets off. They understand a power dominance hierarchy, so like you brought up, the pecking order, Frieza is smart and stronger than King Cold. It's not a good idea to just have a little news flash that there's a new emperor, and it's King Cold's son. The problem with that is there would be a huge uprising. King Cold has stepped down, there's a new king. I didn't gloss over your point here. The clip that I added in was just to exaggerate how I found your alternative to be ridiculous. Frieza understands the value of the Saiyans. He makes note of their fighting ability throughout Dragon Ball. They have the ability to get strong, and if one were to become a Super Saiyan, that's it for him. This is before anybody even knew if a Super Saiyan existed at all. Even a slave master doesn't kill his best slaves, he just conditions them differently. And the Saiyans are Frieza's best slaves. They're trash to him, but trash that grows his army and gives him a lot of money. So that's why they get the special treatment of being visited by King Cold. There's the unique aliens that are strong enough to make up Frieza's elite, of course, but Kui's race isn't one of them. Kui was just really strong. Get a gang of Saiyans on you and even Ginyu would have a tough time holding them all back. You don't really want to lose such a powerful force, so that's why King Cold prepares this ceremony. There's pre-established lore to back up what's going on here, so there's plenty of indication that Saiyans are important to Frieza. Later you're going to ask why Frieza killed his henchmen and reference how I said it needs a lot of people to man. Soldiers and operators aren't really the same. And while it does look like a lot of people did go down to fight Bardock, it wasn't nearly his entire ship. You also bring up that Frieza killing the Saiyans would cause an uprising, but every single Saiyan was called back to the planet. The point was to eradicate them with no evidence of their existence, and he even used a cover-up. The few Saiyans that were left, I mean, what are they gonna do? They still work under Frieza. So you ask why this scene exists, and the reason that it exists is because Frieza's the mastermind villain of the movie. He's pulling the strings, so it's presenting the audience to the character. I saw in my comments that you didn't agree with people watching a movie that already has pre-established lore. And while sure, that is your opinion, a lot of movies actually enact this quite long form opening that establishes other things long before we get to the main cast, or even what the advertised character is. They use multiple perspective characters to fully give you the idea and set up everything for after. You're going to bring up how the scenes following aren't important a lot, so I'll just get this out of the way to save time. This movie was shown in theaters, so people going to see it aren't all going to be Dragon Ball fans or even know what Dragon Ball is. Super was very divisive and got a lot of backlash from start to finish. This is something you can relate to because there's actually a lot of people that didn't want to watch Super. It got a lot of backlash from start to finish. The last time that many people saw Dragon Ball probably was Dragon Ball Z, if they even saw Dragon Ball at all. This isn't a series of movies, so there's no requirement to watch anything else. It's designed so that anybody can just pick it up and understand what's happening while also being informed. It's one of the most common things in movies. I'm not going to convince you to agree with that, but it is a fact that it's written to be a movie for new and old fans. Later in the video you mentioned that you don't know how Goku and Vegeta are main characters, and while I would explain how writing works, I'll just be as quick as possible instead. Antagonist, Broly and Frieza. Protagonist and Deuteragonist, or otherwise known as the main characters, Goku and Vegeta. Broly is the title character, but he is not the protagonist. In fact, he's one of the antagonists, so no. I strongly disagree with your point. What's funny is that during the scene I had my own criticisms for it that didn't question why everybody was here. What I wanted to know was how the hell is everybody still the same age as they were in Z? I understand where you're coming from, but I see this as a heavy-handed nitpick. The reason I say that is because there's plenty of movies that are considered timeless classics that begin the movie with just the villain, and it displays what they do, who they are, and what type of technology or how they throw around their power before we even present it to any sort of story. It tends to work really well. It's a tried form of writing. I don't think Toriyama is a good writer. In fact, I think he's absolute ass. But I'm not going to ignore what form of writing he's taken on. If you were to say, I hate this form of hook, then that's fine. I can't argue with that. As I said, the problem I had with the video is not that you dislike the movie, it's your arguments you use to back up why you dislike something. So I say this at the beginning of the video, the movie hasn't been made non-canon yet, so what you're presented is canon until otherwise shown. To hammer in your view of something without realizing how you presented your idea tempted me to skip in so I could stop hearing you repeat yourself like I'm in the room with you and can answer. Once you get the point across, you don't have to keep saying it for 10 minutes straight. My point should be invalidated the first time, unless you're bringing it up again later. This is why I often reference how everything in the movie could be considered pandering. You never clarified what sort of fan service that you enjoyed and hated, nor brought an alternative to what a good reference or Easter egg would even be. So I could only go based off what you said and not what you intended. This is why it's important to be clear when giving criticism. Nobody knows what you're comparing something to, and there's no way to figure out what you actually know, since the majority of people don't even know you outside of the video that they're watching. You said that you didn't like the overuse of Funimation actors in anime. That in itself is a fair stance. There's nothing I would have said to change that, and I would have glossed over it as a nitpick. However, your point was never that you hated Chris or Funimation as a whole. You may have intended that to be what you meant, but you worded your criticism separate from that, which is actually something you've done quite a bit judging by how you further explain your other points in the video. What you did say is that it wasn't immersive hearing the same voices, which is what you used to back up why you didn't like them reusing actors. Not that you just didn't like the actors personally. What I said in response was about recognizing actors in a show. My point was never if somebody hated an actor, only when somebody recognized the voice. The reason the Keanu Reeves reference works is because that's what I was referencing. If somebody disliked Keanu Reeves, then they of course wouldn't want to see him in either of those movies. Also, fuck Tara Strong. If you want to see the vast amount of insignificant roles Chris actually plays, go to Behind the Voice or check his IMDb page. Zoro, All Might, Armstrong are his largest roles from the picture I selected, with Jason and Kits being minor roles. I can see how you would have gotten the impression that those pictures alone were supposed to derail your point, but based off my words and not just the visual, you can get the complete picture of what I was saying. As for saying he slightly changes his voice, I'm going to assume you're exaggerating because Korin, Jace, Berta, Yamcha, and Raccoon sound nothing alike. If you just mean in general, then I'm not going to lie that his lower tone voice is more commonly used when he does take on a role. They can tell what they can and can't do outside the womb, yes. That's actually exactly what their race does. At their roots, they are warriors, but fleshing out a race is something that a lot of writers do. They want them to be more believable. If you think that's bad, then okay, I disagree. I like when writers expand on things and make the universe they've crafted feel more lived in and thought of. Based on what the show has told us, I'm sure the Saiyans that don't fight are purely anecdotal and so rare that they're considered worthless and probably not really looked at as a good Saiyan. But that's my headcanon based on what other Saiyans have said throughout the show, so it's not a fact. It's just a claim backed up by a ton of evidence. By you saying, of course the Saiyans have downtime and that there are outliers, reinforces the point I was making. Even during the Cell Saga, it's not that Goku didn't want to fight Cell, he wanted to get stronger so that he would be able to. But through training with his son, he realized that there's something he could pass on his legacy to. Gohan was stronger than him and he had the power to defeat Cell. Goku wasn't backing down from Cell because he was afraid, he was championing his own son. He wanted his son to see that he has that Saiyan ability and that he can surpass even him. That one moment where Goku didn't want to fight somebody wasn't really him not wanting to fight, he just saw a better option in his son. As for Vegeta, his Saiyan pride had been watered down by the experiences he's come up against. Being with the family made him a lot softer and he's learned to care. During the Buu Saga, that's why he blows himself up. Even after letting himself become evil, he realized he found pride elsewhere. It wasn't just about him anymore. Later in the video you say that an author can change characters to fit the narrative. Well no, duh, that's what writing is. Characters interact in a way and they respond to scenarios. People get invested in the characters because they enjoy what's happening. They fully understand what the characters are going through and they can relate to them. Or they just like the way they deal with situations. If you want to talk about narrow-minded thinking, that's the most narrow you can get. In your mind, because you know an author is writing a character, therefore everything they do or say doesn't matter. The characters still said it. The author intended it to be taken the way that it was said, unless of course stated by another character later. Writing a story is more than just character does this because that is what I think should happen. It's also asking why it would happen and how. There are so many moments in Dragon Ball that I heavily disagree with. I think Goku is a terrible character during the Android Saga and after. He's an absolute asshole and just lets things happen because he wants to fight people. If I were to deconstruct everything I disliked about Dragon Ball, we'd be here all day. When things happen in a show that aren't negative or positive, I don't see a reason to bash it. The Saiyans are still battle-hungry mercenaries for the majority, but there's exceptions, as there would be for everything ever. You're enhancing exceptions by making them the main focus. By doing that, you don't accurately depict what's going on in the movie. That's the issue I had with your criticism. The only two Saiyans to show a great amount of character to the children in the movie was Bardock and Gine. Paragus and King Vegeta did see them as tools. You're right. That's what I'm saying though. So you're actually agreeing with me here. The Saiyans are still Saiyans. There's moments in my video where I agree that things are dumb and not everything should be accepted. So your point is just a false representation of me. Just as a side note, Bardock didn't send Goku and Raditz to a random planet because they were weak. I'm going to assume you just meant Goku, so the reason he sent Goku to Earth was because he cared about his son, and he knew that Earth was a weak planet that Goku could go to. Bardock wouldn't have bothered to send Goku to Earth if he didn't expect Frieza was up to something. Yes, I enjoy this retcon. I think it's good and adds to the story, but like I said, I don't care if you don't. I'm just saying it needs to be portrayed accurately in a review. Remembering my point from earlier, Saiyans work in a power hierarchy. Imagine what a race based off of that would think if the person they were supposed to follow was a pampered prince instead of somebody who grew up around them. I was debunking that you said Vegeta and Broly were just in the same room together. I'm aware that it's not what you meant, but it's what you said. That's how I even got the idea that you're trying to push a false narrative. Yeah, it is a really stupid thing to just put Broly in there without telling King Vegeta. Paragus is considered a low or a mid-class Saiyan. You can gather this information judging by how King Vegeta talks about him in the scene. By default, Broly shouldn't be allowed in there because he's not an Elite Saiyan. Elite Saiyans breed more Elite Saiyans. Broly should be in another room by Saiyan law. He isn't shocked that a baby is in a pod, he's shocked that a low-class warrior is. When they tell him he's stronger than Vegeta, well, he's not too happy about that. Yeah, the scientists are stupid for doing that, but Toriyama wrote the scene like that. So, if we're going off your own criticism of me, you know they were just written that way, right? They're just characters in a story. They're not really that stupid. You asked if Paragus was thrown out of the throne room, and no, he wasn't. He acted against King Vegeta's orders and busted through the window. He's definitely on the wanted dead list. Paragus just wanted his son back. He was showing a crazy amount of passion for that kid, a father who would do whatever it takes to get his son. It seemed pretty noble of him, and you might have taken the scene as Paragus having a soft heart, but it's obvious why he liked his son so much later on, and it was really just because of how strong he was. So you also say Beats was kidnapped, and you mentioned that he wouldn't care about a kid because this is normal for Saiyans. Well, Paragus told him that he was sent to die, not to conquer a planet. As I shown in the video, only the Kai version has the Bardock scene. Z does not have this. I don't want to say that you didn't watch my point here, but it really sounds like you didn't. Only Kai has the scene with Bardock in the opening. The only time they show this scene in the original airing of Dragon Ball Z is when Frieza mentions it after Goku confronts him for the first time during the Namek Saga, not the Saiyan Saga. Another thing is that you bring up the way Saiyans were originally written, and again, it's like you weren't really paying attention to my video. I explained to you that Akira Toriyama didn't write Bardock the father of Goku. That's not how the Saiyans act or were supposed to be viewed. Any other time you bring up how Saiyans used to be, I'm gonna have to ignore it. The personality of Saiyans shown in Bardock the father of Goku was not the intended way to see them. That movie never happened. Bardock cannot see the future. He tried to go against Frieza. The end. There's nothing else. That entire movie was not canon and has never been. Bardock doesn't have that team. Fasha doesn't exist. Dodoria never killed his whole team. Now that may have happened off screen, but it's never confirmed that that team from the movie existed that way at all. I wish that they had Bardock's fight scene in the movie. I was actually really disappointed that they didn't even include it. It's one of my favorite scenes too. It's a character defining moment. I also agree that the Saiyans should have fought back too. That's why I didn't mention that you said that, because my point wasn't about that. This movie of course changes what that movie showed, because this is the actual society the Saiyans live in. Before you say anything, I have no issue with you favoring the Bardock Saiyans over the Broly Saiyans. The reason I brought this point up is because you're presenting the Bardock Saiyans as canon. No. I wouldn't be playing that game. Okay, so being somebody who loves games, I gotta tell you, man, you'd hate this game a ton. Now, I like gameplay just as much as I do story, and the story in this game can be absolute buns. But the gameplay will keep me coming back. In Dragon Ball games, they don't actually play like each other. Unless they're the same series, of course. My friend Sassy, if you don't like Dragon Ball, don't buy Kakarot. Don't even glance twice at that game. It plays pretty well, and it's fun, but man, did they mess up on a lot of things. I'm getting the impression that you don't really know what Kai is, so I'm gonna kind of explain it real quick. If you do, then just forget what I'm saying here. Kai removes every bit of filler in the show and only leaves in what's canon. If it wasn't in the manga, it's not in the show. With some exceptions, of course. They updated a lot of the scenes and the acting, but the script is so much better. I don't like some of the replaced actors, but everybody still does a really good job as the characters they play. This is my recommendation to you. Z is dated. It has lines that are different from the original script, and it's just old. The only thing I don't like about Kai is the music, but other than that, I recommend everybody new and old watch Kai. It will make you like the show again. So what you're bringing up are extreme cases. Lore and story has always been important, especially in fantasy stories. It's not a new trend, and it's always been a thing. People get invested in things. It's not a crime. Unlike with Five Nights at Freddy's, I'm not digging through 2-second scenes to theorize. I'm just going off episodes. I'm not required to go out of my way to come up with some scheme of how the author put the story together. Personally, I think Five Nights at Freddy's is bullshit, and the story he made for the game came from MatPat's videos. I doubt the story was something that the developer even had in mind for the game. That's your pander right there. He was making him money, so he kept pretending there's a story, and the audience all made it up for him. That is your malicious figure, through and through. I'm not saying that Akira Toriyama master crafted the story and it was the epitome of how a writer should perform, and there are no flaws. You want to make it seem like that's what I'm saying really bad, but it's just not the case. I'm saying that the structure and the time he put in the show was how you write something like this. There's plenty of room for improvement and the dialogue can be a lot better, but if you want to see how something is done, it's still a good example. You bring up Naruto again and character backstories. This is an actual halt to the story because something is already supposed to be happening and we're cutting away to watch 7 episodes of why Tenten is actually a good ninja. When you watch Naruto, it's like, I'm watching Kakashi fight Madara, and now I'm watching Choji learn his expansion jutsu. What the hell is this? In Broly, the story isn't interrupted, it's still constantly moving along from one plot to the next. It isn't adding scenes like Bardock telling Yine how much he loves her, or Paragus being appointed colonel, or how King Vegeta reacted to Paragus leaving. Every action the characters take relate to the plot, and they do it organically rather than just be in your face about it. That's what I was referring to.
Also like how all of Bardock's clothes get blown off, but there's a patch of cloth to cover up his dangly bits. Gotta keep this family friendly now, or else we can't make as much money.
Oh, nigga, you gay!
What? What? I'm gay? First and foremost, I can't believe you're using that as an insult. However, no you!
We're not gay! Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's fine if that's who you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have many gay friends.
You mom gay. So, I heard this entirely different and just missed this as you saying that Nappa was getting the message. Nappa also isn't a higher rank than them. The only person confirmed to be a low-class warrior here is Raditz. You're right, I said all of them, but this guy. Also, yes, just like a text, they would all get it. But, as we've established, they assume that Frieza is just calling them back to base again, so they ignore it. The one saying is the only one who decided to open Frieza's text message at that point. So in a movie, not everything has to be hidden or guessed by people who catch it. I'm going to assume that you're doing that thing where you talk about a subject and using the movie to lead into that, but this is the thing that creates the problem. You start talking about a scene, then you use that scene to go on a tangent about something else that you intended, while using that as an example rather than your actual point, because you're not even trying to say the movie needs to be filled with subtle hints all over the place. What you're saying is that you enjoy when movies use that tactic. This is how people keep misinterpreting your words and examples. The absolute mindset that you've garnered from my Broly video is pretty impressive, considering that the 4 most recent videos I uploaded to my channel are actually negative in tone. Since we're on the topic, if you actually take some minutes to watch my video instead of skipping through between every 2 words I say, you'll find that I have a similar take to you when it comes to criticizing something. I don't like people who blindly love things. Everything needs to be criticized in order for it to improve. This is a stance I take on literally everything. I am fully against people who think that because they enjoy something, it can do no wrong. As I said earlier, and even in my response, I don't care if you hate it or love the movie. You see, what actually bothered me was the way that you explained scenes of reference moments in the show that never happened, and your repeated use of the Bardock movie as canon when it's not. Your reasoning behind me not having many subscribers is because I don't know how to debate. and my reasons don't make any sense. On the contrary, just scroll through my comments on my Sonic video. Everybody fully understands what I'm saying and even agrees. Not with every point, but most of what I'm saying comes off as valid points. So yeah, they enjoyed it even though I wasn't taking their side. To put it into perspective, if I were to find a video that I enjoyed and the guy had 6 videos, I wouldn't subscribe either, especially when every video they had uploaded was 6 months to a year in between. What you're saying is simply not true. I mean, just spending a few minutes on my videos would debunk that. I'm going to take your word that you watch my other videos. Picture shows otherwise. The reason it's hard for me to believe you here is that I heavily criticize the Sonic game and mostly the Sonic fanbase in my video. My like to dislike ratio is actually really good. Sonic fans are some of the worst. You gotta understand this by now. When you articulate yourself well, bring up valid points and reasonings, and you're able to show that you have a solid foundation of knowledge on a subject, or even just show that you care for what you're talking about, you'll find that people will find it hard to dislike you. Your arguments become solid and hard to shake, and people will agree with you more. I've been debating people for a very long time, and I regularly watch debates, political and just debates like this about random subjects or hot takes. My subscriber count is not indicative to the quality of my videos, it's a testament to my terrible upload schedule and lack of channel direction. This idea that if you hate something it must be painted in a bad light is wrong. The more people can disprove you, the less valid anything you say becomes. You want to assure people that you really are being honest and not making something seem worse than it really is. Context is crucial in every debate. You absolutely cannot present something as a fact without backing it up. So they actually don't constantly say it. It's always in the same context it would be otherwise. The subject is brought up. It's not like the Saiyans walk up to each other and all like, "How do you do, fellow elite? Yes, my mid-class Saiyan warrior friend. Ah, here comes the low-class Saiyan warrior. Hello, elite class Saiyan warrior and mid-class Saiyan warrior. I am a low-class Saiyan warrior. Thank you for talking to me since I have no latent power in me." I implore you to rewatch the movie and rewatch the Saiyan saga. It's not said nearly as much as you're pretending it is. You're exaggerating. They use the same context as they would in the Saiyan saga. You can't argue that it's dumb here and then backtrack it for saying they do it fine in the Saiyan saga either. If it's dumb here, then it has to be dumb there too. Your reasoning is inconsistent, which means it's not applicable to a debate. You do. It's an uninformed mess, and you'll have many people coming at you to debunk you. It's very important that somebody reviewing something is a reliable source as not to push away people. There's a lot of reviewers out there that are paid off by other people or just hate the movie to hate it. Your point was that nobody else is shown during the scene, while anybody can see there's other villains in the background. You then go even further and say they should have multiple sequences of various scenes in Dragon Ball, like meeting Krillin and Master Roshi. What the hell? I understand him fighting Tien, but why would it show him just saying hello? Talk about pointless scenes in a movie. When critiquing and giving your reasoning, it's important to be clear. Notice how your video is 3 hours long. It's not because I didn't understand you, it's because you explained your reasoning so poorly that it was easy to misconstrue what you were saying. Okay, so I didn't try to dispute the claim, so I didn't get a strike on my channel. The point wasn't to make money off the response because I don't care. I wanted people to see what you weren't showing and how you took these moments out of context. The most telling thing for me was back in the Baby Vegeta scene when you didn't have the screenshot of all the other pods. The screenshots that you chose did seem pretty malicious. Even if that wasn't your intent, that's what I got out of it based on your words and what you were showing. So, like I said, the show has a genuine problem. The reason that I comment about this is because it's an incorrect judgment passed on Frieza. I was able to decipher that you weren't really upset that Frieza and Goku could transform during the Namek Saga, and instead were upset by the way people get stronger in the show, which I think is a serious problem. It's horrendous writing and nobody has done anything to fix it. You got Tien and Piccolo standing on the sidelines doing jack shit while all the Saiyans stand around beating each other off to the next villain. I cannot stand the fact that Akira Toriyama has underutilized all of these characters. A lot of them are really cool. I love Tien still. Piccolo is still that guy. But the show doesn't care about making them stronger. Meanwhile, Goku is able to absorb his own Spirit Bomb and now he's Ultra Instinct. It's fucking stupid and I hate that that's how they write these characters. You know how Berta says he's the fastest thing alive because he's Sonic the Hedgehog, right? okay, anybody with a power level higher than him moves faster than him. What the hell does that even mean? Guldo literally freezes time. How do you move faster than that? The power scaling is the dumbest thing of the entire show, and I wish they never presented the idea. Also, I don't like the concept of Super Saiyan God. I don't like how Goku just remembered the form. I like the blue hair, but something about the God form has never sat right with me. I'm right there with you. I do not like Super either. Android 17 defends an island where all he does is fight poachers. This dude was as strong as Super Saiyan Blue Goku. That show sucks. Everything after the Cell Saga I'll accept as being seen as a free power-up because everybody was just popping out Super Saiyan and beyond at that point. I seriously hate the Buu Saga. I didn't say any of this in my response because that wasn't my point. I stick to what I'm talking about. I try to avoid saying things that lead to rambling and tangents. There is still some good in the Buu Saga, but there's so much garbage. It's the way that you said it that made me think that you were confused why there's two versions of Trunks. Even the people I watched your video with weren't hopping on the "he knows who this guy is" train. Deadass, I've actually said the same thing. Whoever is in charge of the Dragon Balls has gotta be immortal. Hey, Piccolo can be mad about it all day, but that nigga know he don't be doing nothing but meditate at some waterfalls. So yeah, they have held on to the Dragon Balls to create specific wishes that they planned, but they didn't just have them to have them. But apparently that's just what Bulma does now. So, in order to have a Zenkai boost, they have to be brought back from the brink of death. They can't just take a quick beating, they have to literally be moments away from dying. Just being tired doesn't cut it. If you're immortal, you can't be near death. That concept cannot exist. Sure, you can get hurt and all that, but there will never be a time when you're near death. That's an oxymoron. If you can't die, you can never be near death. Period. Well, you left out my favorite one. That Thanos picture was the best reply. I'm obviously just poking fun at you. I didn't think you'd take it as though I was threatening you. I thought it was a good laugh. There's many different ways to debate. There's no correct way to do it. There's respectful debates, disrespectful debates. The most crucial part of a debate is proving that your facts are valid while the other person's has little merit, if any at all. I'm not arguing what the android's stamina is like. My point was that they're not immortal. I understand what you're saying, but the androids can still die. Even if Piccolo lost, Vegeta and Trunks were both on their way, and neither of the androids would have stood a chance. This point in general is an inconsistency with the show, but my argument was the distance that he's sitting. I think it's more strange that Goku can feel everybody's energies throughout the universe with instant transmission, but somehow nobody could detect Broly's power level. On Earth, they learned to hide it. Saiyans just kind of walk around with their power levels fluctuating. You could have brought up so many other things in regards to someone's power level, but you decided to bring up the distance of Frieza, so that's what I commented on.
And we're introduced into what I'd like to call waifu bait. Chilai here only exists for people to fan cream themselves over nothing. I don't recall seeing anyone that looked like this in literally any other part of Dragon Ball Z, when it wasn't imperative that a beautiful girl exists for young boys to froth over.
So maybe that's an editing mistake or just the way you deliver this line, because it sounds like this is just one full sentence. No cuts or anything to indicate that you were retracting what you just said. There's no indication that you were agreeing with me at all here. It's another moment that my friends and I heard and were just blown away that you would say what you said. In this reply, you're saying that the women like this were all over the place. I'm just gonna agree to disagree here. You definitely argued that the Dragon Ball Z didn't have fan service like this though. Like I said in the video, there was no indication he made the collar. You completely glossed over my point here. You can only speculate that he either made it or the collar was already on the ship. You bring up later that it shouldn't be strong enough to bring Broly down. Yeah, I can see why you don't like it. I don't care about it either way. I also didn't say Paragus doesn't sleep or somehow wake up before Broly. All I said was he waits for Broly to sleep because he doesn't trust him. You're purposely scrambling my explanation to make me sound stupid. Also, by saying this is a new take on Broly, I'm not insinuating that they would not borrow elements of the original movie. You're putting words in my mouth.
Boobs McGee over here pickpockets the transmitter from Paragus while they're talking to each other. Eye to eye, face to face.
I can't argue with you here. I said the same thing.
Alright. Alright, you gave me one. and I was thankful. You gave me 2, and I was on my knees. You give me 3, bro, we gonna be like this.
I'm a man of color, and showing 2 black gentlemen kissing is a microaggression, and now I'm offended. I'll see you later tonight. So in Dragon Ball, he's trained by Grandpa Gohan, who found him when he first arrived on Earth. Grandpa Gohan was a martial artist, and he was trained by Master Roshi himself. He would use these same teachings to train Goku. You'll need to watch Dragon Ball to fully understand Goku's upbringing. He didn't just get sent to Earth and start living off the land. He was immediately found. And now you know how Gohan got his name. Alright. So Japanese media is actually required to not show blood to keep age ratings depending on the time slot that they give the show. Yes, it is to keep their age rating. That's not actually a bad thing. The manga of Dragon Ball is actually brutal. Even Dragon Ball Super's manga has some moments like that. If they want their time slot and to let their audience see it, it does need to be altered. This is a television restriction and age rating. If you show blood, that's getting bumped up. If Toriyama could, he would show blood all the time. He's never shied away from this. You even mentioned it earlier, the show is still for younger audiences. So to say that it's doing this because they just want cash, in itself is pretty facetious. For one thing, there's nothing wrong with a company wanting to make money off their product. How they do it is what's wrong. Dragon Ball as just a show alone has the possibility of age-gating their own fanbase, so it's not a smart move. There's nothing else I can say if you still disagree with this not being a shady practice. A company understanding their audience and trying to maintain the time slot isn't a bad thing. Also, this is another example of Paragus being a dick to Broly for no reason. He was literally just playing with what he considered to be his friend. Paragus didn't like that, so he shot him. Paragus is an asshole. Well, no, of course you don't. But you do have to keep the same context. Saying the gist of something summarizes it properly, and doesn't change what the context is. Unless you're a journalist, then you go ham, buddy. But you change the context of the scene by saying they called this story the saddest thing they ever heard. This is a misconception about you that came from your own words. You don't have to go and seek any information at all if you don't want to. The problem is that you said that is what you do. So I assume that, well, that's what you would want to do. What's funny is that the 3-hour-long video is probably what you should have done in the first place. Even though you're still getting things wrong with the canon of Dragon Ball because you haven't seen as much as I assumed from what you were speaking, now you're actually going in depth with why you feel a certain way and what you're trying to get at rather than a quick, easily misconstrued representation of what you meant. You know, what's funny is that I thought the same. I don't like anything about Paragus' character in either movies. I was trying to not really focus on my opinion on the movie itself. Of course, I slipped up here and there, but for the most part, I was explaining how you were wrong about the scenes that you were explaining. Whether or not I agreed with the scenes myself wasn't the argument. There's moments that are unforgivable that I had to leave in though, so I just said that the criticism you gave was valid and moved on. When Chilai and Lemo found Paragus, he was of course grateful to see people after so long, but after being put into Frieza's army, his true intentions and personality were clear for everyone to see. So yeah, he was a dick from the start. Let's not forget that he literally shot beets just to conserve food. I do agree with you, it's a ridiculous scene. I'm not a fan of how Frieza's character is handled, and I don't like that he's even in Dragon Ball Super. The reason I cut out the Bulma Island Shake scene was because during editing I found that there was a lot of useless material in lines where both our critiques were just pointless nitpicks. I didn't feel like it was necessary to keep a few of the scenes in. It was already an hour long. Obviously, when you really enjoy something, you can take it apart better than somebody who's just idly watching it. But my way of taking things apart is very different from how you do it. But to reference the Bulma thing, if you could hear the amount of times that I absolutely shit on this show, you'd be surprised at how much I know while at the same time think that I hate it all. It'd be more of me reminding people that I reluctantly love the show rather than me having to clarify that I'm a diehard fan. My words would speak to my love for the lore and the characters. There's a ton of gripes that I have with Dragon Ball as a show, I just enjoy it because it's such an iconic thing to me. I hate the idea too, I think it's really stupid, but because Broly has this overwhelming source of seemingly never-ending power, a lot of what you say and said in response to me about while he's fighting Vegeta and Goku is already debunked because you're refusing to factor that in. I understand that it's not a good concept and that you don't like it, but you can't just admit that and pretend like it doesn't exist. Broly is kinda like the Hulk, he just keeps getting stronger and stronger with no end in sight. No matter how much damage Vegeta tries to deal on this guy, he keeps coming back. unscathed and repeatedly trying to wail on him. Broly isn't taking any damage. It doesn't matter if he can't keep up Vegeta in the fight. He's tanking Vegeta's hits like they're nothing. It's extremely obvious that the guy is strong. Still not gonna happen. Okay, obviously I didn't say foreshadowing, therefore good writing. I was giving an example of something that was actually well done. You talked about foreshadowing earlier back in the Bardock scenes where everything was heavily forced. This is like when a show has a pre-established history and they make a flashback to show you how exactly everything panned out. You know what's going to happen, it's just showing you the events that led to it happening. This is something that happens with so many stories that it isn't really a negative thing. It's really common. Someone or something is repeatedly referenced and it's a build-up to when you see those events play out for yourself. For most people it's very rewarding to actually see something rather than just hear about it. In your case, I guess that just doesn't work. When referring to how I looked at the scene, you painted it as though I didn't know that Frieza would blow up the planet. For one, it's not an initial plot point of Z. It wasn't corrected until the Namek Saga, and let me tell you, you gotta make some headway on the show before that is even brought up again. I don't explain that there's tension because I didn't know what would happen. That's how you set up tension in general. Think of it in the perspective of people who don't know what's going on. Toriyama still does well in making everything click. Just because you know something doesn't mean that everybody knows something and therefore bad. That's just not how that works. I have friends who have watched the movie who have never had any interest in Dragon Ball, and upon watching this opening alone, they were fully invested. And when they saw Broly fighting, they were in it 100%. See, the movie captured a ton of new fans and brought many people back to the series. When the movie came out and was still being shown, it was like when Dragon Ball came out for the first time. It was hard to find anybody who doesn't praise Dragon Ball. It's like it used to be when I was a kid. Everybody loved Dragon Ball. I'm not gonna apologize when I tell you they did a really good job with this opening. It did exactly what it set out to do. Dragon Ball was once again on everyone's top 10. Broly's aura is just green. He, as a character, just has green aura. The Uzaru form that Broly takes on is just the Uzaru form. It's not Legendary Super Saiyan. This is Kale. She's a Legendary Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball Super. The canon version of Legendary Super Saiyan is not changed based on Dragon Ball Super, not the non-canon source of the original Broly. This is Broly in this movie when he does go Legendary Super Saiyan. This is why I have to ask if you paid attention to the movie again and again, because it's like you don't notice the vital moments of the movie. The form has not been redesigned. Broly's initial appearance has been redesigned, and like I said, Broly hasn't even gone Super Saiyan, and his hair has not changed color yet. You're actually missing that point of the movie. You can try to deny it, but he factually, indisputably, has not entered Legendary Super Saiyan. Super Saiyan 1 has a multiplier of 50. Broly was still unscathed against Vegeta's Super Saiyan God, so now he's 10 times more likely to overpower Vegeta, because even when he was a Super Saiyan God, Vegeta was unable to do damage to him. So now he's got 10 times that amount of armor and power. This is one of those times where your original love of the series is questioned, because Goku just watched his best friend die. Nobody is in the right mindset when they're that mad. Even if he hadn't gone Super Saiyan, I can promise you, he'd still be insanely upset. Goku did not threaten to kill his son. I don't know why you're saying that. I do have to debunk your claim here. Goku tells Gohan to leave. It's pretty much all that happens in the scene. He says before he loses what little sense of reason he has left because he's pissed. Goku would not kill his own son, nor would he ever threaten to do that. Goku would just be yelling at him. That's literally how anybody would be reacting if they were as mad as him. I don't know why you would take it to the extreme of he's going to murder his son. That point of reasoning is actually insane. And then you say, narratively speaking, they have to come back at some point. Okay, you know what? Let's assume that you're right. Simply by saying Toriyama changed how Super Saiyans work in the same episode that we see one, and then subsequent episodes later, that literally means that they don't lose control because he changed it. That one instance of it happening has now been shifted. So by saying this, you're actually just reinforcing my argument that it doesn't make them lose their mind. You can say that it's dumb that it happens, but the argument you're making isn't that it's dumb, it's that Saiyans lose their mind when they transform into Super Saiyans. While yes, the narrative can change to be whatever the author wants, that doesn't mean that it does. I mean, I can say that about anything. Broly can beat Vegeta to a bloody pulp because Toriyama wanted him to be that strong. It's not what happens, but he could totally do it. Toriyama didn't like how Goku's story began and he felt it was incomplete, so he changed it. Pay attention to the context of the scene and the fight. Seriously, watch Goku fight Frieza and listen to how he's talking to him. He's still Goku, he's just angry. You bring up Gogeta being out of his mind, just watch Gotenks walk around on screen for a bit. The fusion does this to him. It has nothing to do with him being Super Saiyan. Like I said, Super Saiyan 4 didn't alter Goku's ability to think properly. Gogeta isn't even a proper example because now you're getting into fusion, which does change the personality of the character. You are talking about transformations. Gogeta, Gotenks, and Vegito are fusions. Two separate people make one technically new person. Yes, in that case, they do change their personality, but what's funny about what you just said is that they didn't lose their mind, and Gogeta was just being stupid, not that he lost his mind. I present you with the facts and the evidence, and then after that, I say I don't see what you're saying. When I end my presented evidence, I'm asking you a question so that you may clarify it. Where is your source, essentially? It is part of the debate. You're taking what I'm saying at the end of my point while ignoring what I just said prior to it. Yeah, it's actually a running gag in the community how terrible Father Goku is. Paragus is actually upset that if Broly dies, he won't get his revenge. It has nothing to do with him loving his son. He's his tool of destruction. Like I said, you forgot your own criticism. I'm well aware of what you said. That's why I brought it up. The main point was he lost his mind. I'm aware that Paragus wouldn't really understand what's going on, but it doesn't change the fact that Broly still lost his mind. Primal instinct is not something that you control at will. It's an instinct. Let's bring back a Gohan point. Gohan actually had that instinct too, and he was a pure-hearted child. Gohan would suddenly burst into a fit of rage and start attacking the aggressor, or somebody that wasn't even attacking him in the first place. It's not something that he has control over, so again, Broly is not fighting because he wants to. For the first part, these people clearly mean to cause Broly harm. They're already being hostile to him, as I said. And 2, as we just went over, Broly lost his ability to think mid-fight. It would only take the shock collar, and the shock collar only, to bring him back to his senses. But the problem is that you've forgotten about in your new response. Paragus doesn't use the shock collar because the device was stolen and then broken by Chilai. I'm gonna feed into your little funny point here. He doesn't have to look so different that he's unrecognizable in redesign. This is why I assume you just say things because you want to say them, not because they bring up a valid point or to reinforce your reasoning. What you said doesn't debunk what I just said or even begin to debunk what I just said. It's a non sequitur. Saying somebody is writing a story, therefore what happens in it can be anything, is a lazy cop-out and is just avoiding the argument entirely. Just because they're characters somebody created doesn't mean they aren't still following the story, and characters can make you like or dislike them based on how they act. People get attached to the characters. This is perfectly normal. Just because you can't find attachment to characters and their personality doesn't mean you should also be incapable of understanding that other people can. That's the whole joy of character development and why people like seeing characters evolve over time. That didn't debunk what I said at all. In fact, your argument no longer pertains to what we're talking about. You went off to talk about context behind the powers and started talking about power scaling. Well, Broly has been endlessly growing in power. If you want to bring power scaling into it, have fun figuring out Broly's power level as it continues to rise and he continues to get stronger and adapt to the heroes of the show. Legit, what you're saying here is another non sequitur. We're not talking about power level. Everything that you just said described Broly's character perfectly. So yeah, you got it. If that's what you took from it, then well, more power to you. I didn't get that from the movie at all. I got the powerhouse that is Broly that I was expecting, the never-ending pool of power that keeps rising. The most devastating enemy that Goku and Vegeta have ever faced. I definitely walked away from the movie thinking that Broly is an absolute monster. Never once did I think that he needs to be protected at all costs. So, weird take. I'm referring to your skewed view of the Saiyans and initial takes on Broly. These are things that I stated in the video. You left out the vital reason why I even said this. It's something you repeated throughout the video, but I chose this moment because you made it abundantly clear to everyone how much you are invested in the show. You can say that you have all the movies, the games, the episodes, the posters, and whatever. That doesn't mean that you regularly watch them, or have checked to make sure that what you've said in your review is correct. Maybe you checked up on a few things, but there's so many instances where you sound so misinformed that it's insane. You know what? Since you left it out, I'll just play the clip of you that brought me to saying this, and it will speak for itself.
Hi, I'm a fan, and when I'm a fan of something, I want to know everything about it. I learn the world, its rules, I follow behind a creator like a little puppy. But when I find that whoever is leading me into their world is a bad guide, I lose faith in where we're going. I'm sorry, I'm just a huge Dragon Ball fan, and I watched this along with watching Super, and I hated both of them.
You said that this is something that you are invested in and look up every aspect about. I can only take your word for that, so I gave criticism as I did there. I didn't defend Akira Toriyama. I was clearly insulting him by saying he doesn't know his own show. It's a weird spin on what I said, but whatever. He forgets elements all the time. It's crazy to us. It's baffling how much he doesn't know about Dragon Ball and how much he forgets about his own characters. He literally forgot what Super Saiyan 2 looked like, and he thought that Super Saiyan 3 was Super Saiyan 2. He thought Android 18 had purple hair while he was making Battle of Gods. Toriyama forgot that Launch was a character, and he has never bothered to remedy that. We are just as surprised as you are that he doesn't know anything about his own show. Keeping up isn't seeing every other thing about a topic. If you keep up with something, it's hard for things to slip through the cracks. Few people that actively follow something aren't up to date. And FYI, Broly was one of the biggest animated movies. You would have heard about it even if you didn't know Dragon Ball existed. You don't think that people have the ability to sway people's opinions and make choices for them, which is fine, because it's easily explainable. There are plenty of people who will refuse to see something or buy a game simply because a review of it is bad. Reviews can be for persuasive purposes, even if you don't mean it that way, and many people use them for that reason. It can also be used as a validation of thought, as somebody such as, we'll say, Markiplier, gave a review of something and said it was really bad and that he doesn't recommend watching it, or even if he just makes a video trashing the entire thing and that's it. His fans are not going to go out of their way to go and give their money to whoever he's talking about. When you have fans, you have an ability to perform witch hunts, review bomb, and be caught in controversy. I understand that you may not have a strong following yet. Let's look at this scenario we're in as if you did have a big following. Simply by me going against your review, my video would have been review bombed to hell, and many of them would have just arrived to dislike my video and say, I'm just mad that you're right. Fans tend to really follow people they're fans of, and they'll listen when they tell them something. So yes, if you were continuing to become a bigger channel, then the words you say would have quite a lot of weight to them. Just more of you taking my points out of context to make me sound dumb. I said the scene is crudely drawn, then proceeded to explain how it's such a small moment of movie, and even said that one trailer would debunk you. Seeking ways to make my points sound dumb doesn't remove the validity of them. You convince nobody by not disproving anything.
So Goku and Piccolo show Vegeta how to do the fusion dance in 30 seconds, but they touch fingers, so I'm not sure why Goku and Piccolo aren't fusing right now.
You can say it was a serious question all day, but you presented it as if it was a dumb moment, not as though it was a serious question. It's yet another moment of you pretending that the way you intended something is the way that you said it. When I tell you to fact check, it doesn't mean you can't have an opinion. I'm telling you to make sure you know what you're talking about before you review something. Your opinion is irrelevant if what you're saying is just false information. You're just pushing a narrative and using the weak defense of, it's my opinion, so I don't have to be correct. There's nothing to do with an opinion when you present a fact. It has to remain a fact.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
By saying incorrect things invalidates the review. It's not about having something off the top of your head, it's being informed while you attempt to inform others. Because you don't seem to have been paying attention enough to understand most scenes. The context for this was actually not relevant because it's not the argument. We're not talking about how the dragon got there, we're talking about the wish. Lemmo has the Dragon Balls and Chilai forces one of Frieza's men to tell her how to use it. That's how the dragon got there, it's not the argument. Because the question wasn't, how did the dragon get there? Like I said, Broly won't back off of Gogeta. So anything to do with the dragon, not gonna happen. Yeah, it's two moves mixed in one. Like I said about Vegeto's final Kamehameha, he does the Big Bang Kamehameha. I mean, same, but there's downtime for literally everybody in the world ever. If you want to read a book or look up something, or actually, isn't this video 3 hours long? That's a lot of editing. Couldn't you have been doing something more productive with all that no time you had? You know, people can really be into something and it doesn't encompass their entire being, right? That was my first Dragon Ball video on my channel, and I'm extremely invested in everything that happens in not only this show, but several other games and movies. Unlike so many people in the world, I don't pretend to not have free time and can happily say that I know a lot about something. You don't have to say anything good about the movie, as long as your arguments still stood ground, which, for the most part, really didn't. The 3-hour video cleared many statements up for sure, and I could say that I agree with some of your points now, but when it's non-factual, I will never agree. You tell me that I should learn how to debate. You then proceed to say that I shouldn't be insulting you by calling you a dumbass or an idiot, but then you say you can insult me, but it's eloquently when you try to, which is just an ego-enhanced version of you saying you can insult me in different ways. You're trying to lecture me on what a debate is and how to do them. Meanwhile, you're literally laughing at my points, calling me a moron, saying I'm a child, and adding words or undertones to the things I've said that I didn't say nor imply. To coach me on how to do something and then not even practice what you preach is... You're being a hypocrite. You're attempting to take the moral high ground, and it doesn't really work if in the same sentence you lecture me on something and then you proceed to do exactly what I just did. I ask you, what is pandering about this movie? Is no one going to watch the movie because Zarbon's not in it? No, of course not. Is everybody gonna hate the movie because it didn't show the original Saiyans? Of course not. What if they never showed that opening scene? Of course not, people would still watch the movie. Let's say they never brought up Bing and Uzaru. Nothing of value would be lost. What if Gohan wasn't in the movie? Oh wait, he wasn't. In fact, none of the other Z Fighters were in the movie but Piccolo, Trunks, and Goten. And guess what? Everybody still went to see the movie. So tell me, Sassy, what is pandering about the movie? Don't forget, I have now given you multiple definitions to work off of. So make sure you're accurate. It's okay to be wrong. Just some examples of Paragus abusing Broly and just being a dick in general because you want to think he's a good father. Paragus shot Ba's ear off just because Broly was slacking on his training. Paragus is rude to Chilai and Lemmo even after they have done nothing but be friendly to both of them since first meeting them. Paragus doesn't let Broly do anything without him being okay with it first, or else he'll be shocked by the collar. He shocked Broly so much that just by Paragus touching the device, Broly starts getting PTSD. Somebody who has been abused all their life, those people get PTSD. Paragus shoots beets to conserve food. You said the planet killed beets? Paragus killed beets. They were on an entire planet inhabited by things to kill for food, and he shot beets. Paragus gets upset that Broly might die because it will prevent him from getting revenge on Vegeta. Not because he loves his son, because If he dies, he can't get his revenge. There's dozens of moments where you could have just looked up something. Like I said in my last video, it's okay to not know something, just look it up. You most likely haven't seen this movie in a long time because you didn't like it. So you try to bring up moments in the movie that you probably forgot by now and try to use them as your defense? What kind of sense does that make? You're still using phrases like I believe and I think and if I recall correctly. Sassy, when you said you were asking a genuine question about fusion, why didn't you just look it up? It only takes a couple seconds. Like, what? What is the purpose of having something like that in a video where you're criticizing a movie? Moments like that make you sound so uninformed and detached from what you're talking about that there's no reason to take anything you say about something seriously. You're reviewing a movie. You're supposed to be informative and knowledgeable. Tell me, why should somebody trust a person talking about a subject who doesn't try to make sure what they're saying is accurate? In relation to a Saiyan's pride, you said that Goku didn't want to fight Cell because he couldn't beat him. That's false, because Goku still wanted to fight Cell. In fact, he's the first person to even get in the ring with him, besides Hercule. When Goku was training with Gohan, he caught a glimpse of what Gohan could become. In Goku's mind, it was the obvious choice of who should fight Cell. But now here's the crazy thing about that. To prove to you that Goku didn't lose his pride, let me remind you how Gohan even ended up fighting Cell in the first place. Goku's pride made him so blinded by how proud he was of Gohan's strength that he gave Cell a Senzu Bean because he said he'd need one to fight Gohan. Goku wasn't able to comprehend somebody having so much strength and not wanting to be a fighter. He stands and watches Gohan get beat up by Cell while everybody is yelling at him to fight Cell again. But Goku thinks Gohan is going to get angry and unleash his full power. It took Piccolo telling him that Gohan was scared and didn't want to fight Cell for him to realize what he was missing. After this realization, Goku tells Krillin to throw him a Senzu Bean, because he's gonna go back and fight Cell. But by then, it was too late. Another moment of pride for Vegeta, even after killing himself, he didn't want to fuse with Goku. After learning that Goku had Super Saiyan 3, Vegeta felt so disrespected. After turning into Majin Vegeta, he really thought they were on equal level for once. A good example from both Goku and Vegeta, after Super Buu turned into Kid Buu, they both refused to fuse with each other because both of them wanted to beat Buu with their own strength rather than an enhancement. It's so weird to me that you would say characters are written by someone so what they do doesn't actually mean anything, and then also bring up how the characters are acting for so many arguments. I feel like you just don't like that I'm coming at you negatively and you're trying to wiggle out of things I say any way you can. Regarding you counting how many times I agreed with you, me agreeing with you doesn't mean anything. Having agreeable points is indication that you have some understanding of what you're talking about. If I agree with you, that means I'm not arguing a point. There's no score for things that I wasn't arguing about. The very fact that you're unable to agree with anything I say is indication of your fragile ego. You're offended when you're proven wrong. You even say, it's rare for me to be wrong, but it happens. That's one of the biggest tells that you only know how to argue and not debate. In an argument, you look for free wins. In a debate, it's about who's correct and what they're saying. You act like I'm crying about everything and just repeatedly calling you stupid and can't accept when something I like does a dumb thing. Yet, I've agreed with you multiple times. Like when Chi-Lai stole the remote, I didn't say, yeah, she stole it, but maybe Paragus just didn't see it. Or when I agreed with you about Frieza just knowing Paragus wants revenge. I tried having a conversation with you and said, well, maybe it was just a good guess based on what we see. I didn't try to convince you that he should just know, I literally agreed with you. In regards to saying none of my reasons make sense, that is what dismissal sounds like. Me saying, I don't know why you're saying something is not dismissing. You need to clarify how you came to a conclusion if you're going to present it as a point. You can't say none of my reasons make sense and then spend an entire minute or more on each point trying to debunk them. If my reasons don't make sense, how the hell do you have anything to counter with? Saying you don't have to specify something or fact check, if you don't specify something, you're not reviewing, you're talking to yourself. By not specifying, nobody's going to pick up what you're talking about, or understand you're joking, or understand a point that you're trying to make. You specify a lot of things in your review, even minor details that are irrelevant, like the island not shaking under Bulma, or how Goku's just using Kamehameha without saying it. So, to then say you don't need to specify makes literally no sense. I'm calling you out for not specifying because those were moments you should be accurate in what you're saying. How can you say you don't need to specify when you literally point out random moments? When it comes to fact checking, like I said, saying something is dumb is an opinion, and I can't dispute an opinion. Being inaccurate about what you're saying, like when you said Broly is legendary Super Saiyan when he clearly wasn't, or when you said Paragus should be shocking Broly but he's yelling instead. In your own video, you go over the part where Chi-Like takes the device. It's like you saw me agree and then forgot that in your own video, because you were so focused on me agreeing, you forgot that was a point you brought up. Like, you seriously think that's legendary Super Saiyan? Or are you saying he has 3 different versions of legendary Super Saiyan because he transforms 3 times in the movie? You said, we've seen the origins of the Saiyans and Goku and Bardock's backstory countless times. Let's challenge that point. Bardock's backstory has been seen once in a non-canon movie and mentioned twice in the anime, where all they said and showed was that he died to Frieza. If you want to say we've seen Goku's backstory too many times, we've only seen him get sent to Earth one time in the entire series, and that was in Kai, when they included only the final moments of Bardock from the non-canon movie, making his confrontation with Frieza canon, except for him seeing the future, so he never knew exactly why he was even fighting Frieza, he just was. In Dragon Ball, Goku's origins were left up to interpretation since it followed a Chinese story called Journey to the West, where a majority of Dragon Ball takes its inspiration from. The concept of Saiyans, and in that, Goku's backstory, wasn't even created until Dragon Ball Z. Seeing that Goku was in a Saiyan incubation pod has only been seen in 2 non-canon movies. Father of Goku, where we see Goku get launched to Earth, and Legendary Super Saiyan Broly, where Goku is only shown to be crying by Broly and isn't sent to Earth in the movie. Meaning, we have never seen the actual history of Bardock and Goku, or even the Saiyans. This movie is the first time we've seen the official backstory of the Saiyans. If you don't like the way the characters in Saiyans are presented, then that's fine. There's multiple occasions that the Saiyans act like you think they should. I'm not going to convince you to like anything. You're free to favor the non-canon existence of Bardock and the Saiyans, and not enjoy the canon existence made by Akira Toriyama. There's aspects about both that I also enjoy. To respond to you saying that they changed Bardock's character. In this movie, Bardock has a semi-change of heart. I wouldn't say he's a loving father. They make it clear that he doesn't know what's even going on in his own family. It's been quite a while since Bardock has seen Gine, evident by what they say to each other. He doesn't know that Goku was still in the nursing capsule, and he had no idea that Raditz even joined the military. Gine even mentions Bardock's acting out of character by caring about something when he decides to save Goku. In response, he says he wants to try and see what it's like to save something for once rather than constantly killing and destroying things. I still see him as the same Bardock, and based on his lines and demeanor in the movie, he still is the same Bardock in terms of personality. Gine is somebody that he obviously cares about. Even asshole people tend to have people they care about and are nice to. Bardock's team was a cool idea, and I like the symbolism behind his red headband, but him seeing the future and having a change of heart because he knows Frieza's going to kill the Saiyans has always been pretty dumb to me. If Bardock was this cold-hearted Saiyan that only cared about himself, I don't even see why he'd go after Frieza and not just save himself. I can tell you've never been in a debate. You've argued before for sure, but I can tell you haven't been in a debate because you use opinions on everything you say instead of a factual answer. You use a lot of dismissals not backed up by any thorough research, like saying my channel doesn't have many subscribers yet I have so many views on this one video from 2 years ago. I can say the same about you. You have 3.5k subs, 146 followers, but the likes on your tweets don't break 10 and your views rarely break 300. You use my channel as a way to say that I don't know how to debate, yet you didn't even take your time to watch a few minutes of my videos. You just say things with no concrete evidence backing it. I feel like you have an ego problem. You don't like to be wrong, and well, nobody does, but there's moments when you just couldn't accept that I actually got you. The only exception is the fusion dance scene, but even there, instead of just leaving it at, I got you, you had to make sure that you felt I didn't win that bit. You said that I was too aggressive, so therefore my points were invalid. I feel as though when you don't like something, it encompasses your mind way too much and you forget everything else. I'll give you examples so you can understand fully. When I brought up what Legendary Super Saiyan looks like, there was literally no possible way you can counter that point, yet you still tried to by saying that's what it looks like now. I understand if you didn't know who Kale was, but the movie has Broly changing forms. You can see it in your own video in a screenshot that you used and kept in the response, where Broly's fighting Gogeta. His hair clearly changed. There's literally no way you can counter what I said about Legendary Super Saiyan, yet you still tried to. When I told you that you already criticized Paragus saying Broly lost his mind, I told you had to re-listen to your own criticism. Because I said this, you proceeded to tell me that your criticism wasn't about Broly losing his mind, but that Paragus said he did when he shouldn't know. Does that sound like it disproved anything to you, or does it sound like it just reinforced that Broly lost his mind? When I said Broly's acting on instinct, by the very definition and how it's used in every sentence ever, instinct is not something you control at will, it's instinctual. So you say Broly is acting on his instinct, which means that's his intent. Explain the logic behind that. When I brought up every instance of Saiyans not losing their mind, and in response you said, well, Toriyama wrote it that way. Think about what you just said. Even after I gave you all the examples of how they don't lose their minds, you say that I'm dismissing what you said because I ended my point with, I don't know what you're saying here. You literally just brought up Goku and Frieza and then Gogeta. You were so annoyed by me calling you stupid and ending my arguments with I don't know what you're saying that you forgot what you just said 2 minutes ago and what I said before I even said I don't know what you're saying. When I gave you 2 scenarios for Paragus' collar, you were so ecstatic that I would bring up that it could have been made on the ship, that you somehow forgot that I said the movie never says he made it and is probably already on the ship as a prisoner collar. When I talked about the openings of Z and showed that it was peaceful in Z, and then I showed Kai, which was the Bardock scene, you obviously just skipped into the video because you were upset that I was challenging your knowledge on the show. There's so many other moments like this in your reply to me. Just listen to yourself. You can't allow things to get so under your skin to the point that you forget what you're talking about or things that somebody said. There's a bunch of moments in my response and this new response I've made where I feel like you're just going to do what you did last time and gloss over my points, or get upset that I'm talking down to you at moments. Here's hoping you don't come at me with another knee-jerk reaction to something I said, and you actually sit down to analyze what I brought up and what you have said in the past. Once again, my name is KotyTang. Thanks for tuning in. When something's coming up on the news, real quick. What is that? It looks like Sassy re-enabled the likes on his video. Aw, yeah.